recently, meet Kevin, Graham, Stephan, and Jeremy Lafarbe. They've been sued by FTX customers, or people who got defrauded by FTX. They made the mistake that they placed their money into FTX as a result of their endorsements. And so there's an open question as to whether they should actually be responsible for actually this shenanigans. My view is it's a little bit complicated. This is a really interesting area of the law. Usually, an endorser is only responsible if they knew or should have known that there was fraud and things of that sort, that they really had a great deal of understanding about the criminal enterprise that existed. But these people were basically saying that they're financial experts, that they know more than a typical endorser, and so they're holding themselves out as people who really know what they're talking about. In fact, I suspect that's one reason why people did put their money into FTX as a result of endorsements from people like Graham Stephan, because if you think about it, why do you watch Graham Stephan's videos or Andrei Jikh, Jeremy Lafarbe? It's because you suspect that they know what they're talking about. That's why you watch them. You don't watch them for purely entertainment. I mean, if you want entertainment, you're going to be watching Netflix. So what's going on here? The problem has a lot to do with the fact that I think the laws with regard to financial endorsers or influencers, it needs to be updated in a way, because the truth is they're having it both ways. These guys want to keep their money. They don't want to get sued for the harm that they caused. But the truth is that the way it existed, the way the law exists today, if I didn't know anything that was going wrong, and a lot of people get hurt, they still are the ones who basically lent their seal of approval. And I think that most of them had very little incentive to actually find out what was going on. And it seemed almost ridiculous how little these guys knew about FTX. It's almost as though they took efforts not to know. I'm not saying that they did. They were trying to purposely avoid things, but I think there are ways that we can prove, however, that they probably knew a lot more than they let on. For instance, during discovery, it will be interesting to see if they had put more money into, say, Coinbase or Gemini, or more reputable crypto exchange, and they had very little into FTX. I think we need to find out about this during the discovery. If we find out during the discovery that they had very little in FTX, or a lot less than others, I think that would indicate that they thought, hey, maybe there's a problem. But the truth is, these financial influencers are really having things both ways, because the truth is, people do come to financial influencers because people think that they know more than the average Joe. But now looking at it, it's almost like they knew less than the average Joe, because they seem to just had no clue as to really what was going on in these enterprises. And I think that's really troubling. I also think, of course, we want to have some personal responsibility. Every time someone on the internet recommends something and it goes wrong, you shouldn't be able just to sue if you should have taken your own guidance. My own view is, if FTX had come to me and said, "Hey, can you really endorse our system?" I honestly would have chosen not to endorse them, and the major reason why is because there really was something very fishy about this whole FTX enterprise from the very beginning. For one thing, the fact that it was based in the Cayman Islands or the Bahamas or wherever, that's kind of like the first sign that there's something that's not quite right about this, because normal enterprises don't take efforts to basically evade the law or to go into these weird jurisdictions. The other thing is, they were spending so lavishly on advertising compared to the more reputable exchanges like Coinbase and Gemini. I don't remember ever really seen too much advertising from Gemini's example. I know that they have their own issue with Gemini Earn. Coinbase don't really. You have never seen like a stadium called Coinbase Stadium or anything like that. So what's funny is if you're really a reputable, you don't really need to spend money on celebrity endorsers and stadiums and stuff like that. It's almost like that's intended to get the lowest common denominator clients, people who don't really know anything, and so they're the type who are just focused on hype and celebrity endorsers and influence, stuff like that. So the problem we have with our current system is that we still pretty much influencers are able to make a ton of money. They're able to pump these kind of ridiculously low quality financial products, and then when things go wrong, they kind of blame the customers. And the problem with that is that I just don't really think that that's the right system that we have today. Like for instance, I'll give an example where it makes no sense to hold an influencer wrong. Let's say I was paid by NordVPN or any VPN, and let's say it just didn't work, or maybe it spied on you, or whatever, something didn't quite go right. Well, if you're watching Michael Gordon, you know I'm not an expert on security. I mean, I think that I know I'm pretty reasonable on that, but I'm not an expert on it. And so if I'm endorsing a particular VPN and it turns out not to work out very well, I don't know if that makes sense to hold me responsible, because you say, no, well, he's just paid to do that. He doesn't really know what he's talking about. He just it's basically a commercial, so do your own due diligence. I think with this FTX, there were so many people who really knew that it was not a very good exchange. I never put one dime in it. I never was enticed to it. I think the more sophisticated people really did know that there was something quite wrong about it. So I do kind of wonder, what kind of law should we have? Now, obviously, no law is going to actually stop any kind of financial shenanigans. There's always going to be a new way to do it. But maybe with financial ads, what we need is some extreme disclosure. Maybe we need to disclose exactly how much they're paid. Talk about the risks, at least as you see it. Like for instance, if you're hawking FTX, say, well, it's based in I forgot, some offshore island, and it's run by one mysterious billionaire. There's not really a board of directors as far as we can see. It's not a public company, so you don't really know exactly what's on the books, and there's no really where to verify whether they are actually segregating the crypto assets from the owner's assets and stuff like that. So at least if there was some really strict disclosure, maybe we would actually be able to say, okay, then they're not responsible. You took the risk. I mean, I think that going forward, if it were me, the only thing I would recommend to a customer, and I was actually paid for it, is maybe if it was an FDIC bank. Of course, banks have their own risk, but at least it's guaranteed with FDIC. Or if it was covered by SIPC, where if something happens to your broker, you still will have your assets. They can't just run away with it. So those are only two that I would recommend if I were being paid. Hint, hint. Because at least there's some kind of insurance and coverage. So I would never recommend any crypto exchange, even if I use it, just because I know that things could go wrong, and I wouldn't want to take that kind of enormous risk on behalf of other people. So let me know what you think. Should Graham, Stephan, Andrei Jikh, Jeremy Lafarbe, I mean, these guys were really pumping that FTX, and it almost seemed ridiculous at the time. I noticed that a lot of them have less viewers as a result of all of these problems that happened. They have a lot more dislikes, I imagine, and I just don't think that they're as popular. All of the comments in the comment section are pretty negative on them, just because they had a lot of goodwill and they threw it away. And I'm not going to throw away the goodwill I have with you. I'm really going to be dedicated to, or only give objective and good financial advice. So let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video. Okay, so today is an interesting day because for people like Graham, Stephan, and Meet Kevin, they got sued for so much money, $1 billion. I
I would hate to have to deal with a lawsuit like that, because that's a really absurd amount of money. Like, who's going to be able to pay that? Would they accept 500 million? Anyways, I think the problem is you really need to do your due diligence. What I think is interesting is, a lot of these people didn't want to actually say anything about FTX for quite a while after it collapsed, and then some apology videos actually were inadvertently used against them in this lawsuit, which I think is very interesting. So whatever you say will be used against you in the court of law. And also, I think it's also interesting that they quoted a story about Taylor Swift and how she declined FTX money for, I think, $100 million sponsorship. So it would be interesting to get into her thoughts about why she declined that money. She must have known something, and that actually was used as a means of, well, you should have known if you did your due diligence like Taylor Swift, then this wouldn't have happened, because she declined the money. So if you were smart, you would have been doing the same thing. So it's an interesting lawsuit. But
although in the court of law they'd say this is speculative, we don't know the reason why she declined.
Yeah, probably it's going to be a hard one to win, I think, but it's certainly not something you want to deal with for years and years in your life. So that's unfortunately something that you have to think about if you ever choose to take money for a promotion.
Yeah, just as someone who went to law school, I know that even if you don't think this lawsuit has any merit, well, these guys are all going to be hiring attorneys, and you're going to be working round the clock on this. I can imagine discovery just being endless, and this is going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars possibly. So it's an interesting development, and I think that this is a wake-up call for financial promoters, that they need to find a new revenue stream. Just hawking crap the crypto exchanges doesn't sound like that's a great way to earn a living, just saying.